This is Serena Cherry from Svalbard, and you're listening to The New Scene.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to The New Scene. I am your host, Keith, and we're back with another brand new episode. And on the show today, we have Michael Malarkey. He does it all. Acting, music. He's been performing in bands his whole life. He's got an excellent new band, Burial Clouds, with an excellent new record, Last Days of a Dying World. It just came out on Church Road Records. We talk about that. We talk about Michael's acting career. We cover everything. And that conversation is coming up shortly. But first, here's how you can support The New Scene. Follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at New Scene Pod. Shirts. We've got shirts for sale at Death Wish Inc. Short sleeve, long sleeve, logo tees, a custom design shirt. You name it, we've got it. Reviews. Give us 5-star reviews on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And you can write a review on Apple Podcasts. Let us know how we're doing. Also, you can catch me out on the road very soon with the Darling Fire. We have tour dates that are kicking off June 9th in Miami. There will be select dates in the Southeast. We are supporting the wonderful band Spotlights out on their tour. Come out and say hello. For more information, check the New Scene Instagram at New Scene Pod, or the Darling Fire Instagram at The Darling Fire. Also, don't forget to support Iodine Recordings. We have a ticket giveaway going on right now for the Bane reunion show that takes place Saturday, June 17th in Boston at Roadrunner. It's a very stacked lineup featuring The Suicide File, Stick to Your Guns, Killing Time, and more. To enter, follow me on Instagram at New Scene Pod, and follow Iodine on Instagram at Iodine Recordings. Tag a friend in the comments section of the post. You could win 2 tickets to the gig. Winners will be selected tonight at 9 p.m. Eastern. The Iron Roses have some Northeast tour dates coming up. That little run kicks off July 13th in Millersville, Pennsylvania. Stretch Armstrong have a gig coming up October 20th in Asbury Park, New Jersey at House of Independence. And finally, Audio Karate have dropped their first new track in 20 years. It's called A Show of Hands. It's part of a limited edition 7-inch that's coming out on Iodine Recordings. So make sure you order that. Give it a listen. The single is out there now. Also, the band has tour dates coming up this summer. For more information, head to the Iodine Instagram at Iodine Recordings or to the Iodine website at iodinerecordings.com. Also, don't forget to support this month's sponsor, Death Wish Inc. Converge Jane Live is out July 7th. That's a live recording of Converge performing Jane Doe at Roadburn Festival. Pre-order yours now. Also, Converge have upcoming tour dates with Brutus. There are dates in the US and Europe, so if you can make it to that, you have to. You have to. 2 excellent bands on one show. Loma Prieta, Last, is out June 30th. Check out their single Glare now and catch them on tour this summer. And sadly, Luke Rock of Modern Life is War was diagnosed with stage 3 colon cancer. And he has a GoFundMe that has been set up to help out with medical costs. Our thoughts go out to Luke and his family. We're hoping for the best. Check the Death Wish Inc. news section for the link to that GoFundMe. For more information, check out the Death Wish Instagram at Death Wish Inc. or check out their website at deathwishinc.com. Okay, so make sure you check back in with me in segment 3. After the interview with Michael, we got mentioned in a few publications. I'll talk about that. I'll tell you everything that's going on with me. But right now, we are going to speak to Michael Malarkey of Burial Clouds. Enjoy. All right, we are here now with Michael Malarkey. Michael, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here, man.
Yes, Michael, it's wonderful to have you here. You know, you've got a lot going on. You've got a new record coming out with Burial Clouds. You are the front man of the band now. The singles sound excellent. Can't wait to hear the record. You're, of course, doing a lot in the world of acting, and I'm sure you've got a lot of great stuff coming up there as well. And Michael, we're going to cover all of that. But first, I need to ask you, how are you doing today?
Starting with the most difficult question, man. Shame on you. I'm all right. I mean, I'm knee deep in kids right now. I got two of them, so it was a mad rush to get here to my garage and get set up. So I'm a little frazzled, if we're being honest. But I'm good, man. You know, enjoying the Atlanta weather right now. Just creeping into the heat, so it's nice. Things are good.
How old are your kids?
8 and 3.
So you probably have your hands full every minute of every day.
Yes, sir. I've got evenings. I've got about 2 hours in the evening. That's mine.
And I'm sure you grasp to it desperately, as if it were the last drops of water in a desert.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you got to have something to keep you going and little projects to look forward to. And, you know, that's why I like to partake in different diverse projects, because it keeps me excited and motivated and a better dad, if we're being honest.
Yeah, I know. I feel you on that. Without my little projects and everything I'm doing, I'm very unhappy.
Yep.
You have the ability to do the two best things, in my opinion, acting and music.
Yeah, well, I've always been a musician, really, since I was about 17 or 18. You know, when I finished high school, I didn't want to go to college, so I started up a band and been making music ever since. Even when I went and trained as an actor and did shows in the West End and in London, I always had my guitar in the dressing room and was writing the whole time. So for me, it's always just been part of my life and my identity, I suppose. So yeah, they happen simultaneously often. You know, when I'm on set, I'm often writing.
Yeah, I've done a little acting myself, and there was a stage play that I was in, and you know, there had to be a lot of emotion in certain parts, so I would listen to certain songs to get me there. Yeah,
the music's a good inroad to access emotion or past stuff or whatever you need for a particular scene, especially like heavy scenes. I like to use music too. I use a lot of like instrumental stuff, you know, like doom jazz and things like that.
Do you is that your go-to if you need to get really emotional or something like that?
Not for the emotion necessarily. I mean, what do I use for emotional stuff? I mean, I use a lot of ambient music because it doesn't tell you what to think. You know, it very much merges with your own feelings, and you can kind of train it to where you're trying to head. So, you know, a lot of ambient stuff.
Yeah, there was a scene where I needed to cry, so I used it's a mostly ambient band called Hammock. So they had a song, and I would use that, and that got me there very, very easily.
That'll get you there. That's very delicate sounds and beautiful sweeping scores.
It's like the perfect cinematic music.
Definitely.
You grew up in Ohio, right? Yellow Springs?
I did, yeah. Yellow Springs, Ohio. Very small little hippie town and kind of near Dayton. And it was great because it was a little arts community, you know. I mean, it still is, although things change and shift over the years. But it was a very supportive environment for trying shit out and creating. And, you know, it was very, very supportive community for that. They weren't trying to be like, yo, you know, get your grades in order and go to college. So I didn't get my grades in order or go to college. I went to I went to acting school instead, but not before playing in various different bands and touring and stuff in Ohio.
Yeah, talk about that. Where did you come in as far as music goes? Did you discover punk, hardcore? Like, what grabbed you? Yeah,
it was very much punk and ska, actually. You know, it was the years of Warped Tour, the golden years, I suppose, of Warped Tour before it got weird. But yeah, like bands like Rancid and Op Ivy, Fugazi, all the DC stuff. I really connected with that. And going to my first shows. I mean, my first show was actually Less Than Jake, because I was really, really into the punk ska stuff and skating. And I kind of backtracked from there and was like, okay, let's look at the roots of these groups. And they were all into the old punk stuff. And so I just started digging, and I'm still digging, But yeah, it started off with punk and kind of morphed into heavier stuff as life got heavier, I suppose.
Yeah. I came in on the heaviest stuff in the world and then kind of backtracked from there. So I sort of did the opposite of you.
Right. What was your starter for 10?
One of the first shows I ever went to was Converge, Dillinger Escape Plan, For the Love of, Turmoil.
Damn. Wow. What an introduction.
I was scared for my life and hooked ever since.
And I liked it. Well, Converge has always been one of my favorite bands, and I quickly went down that route myself and got into Dillinger and all that stuff too. But nice. Yeah, Converge is still top of the game, always, never missing, and just always loved following as well Jake's art and the Death Wish releases. It's just it's all pretty quality stuff.
It's rare for a band to be around that long and still consistently put out music that I enjoy.
Totally.
So when did you start performing? Now, I read you became singer for a band called Shadyside. Was that the first band you joined?
No, the first band I joined was called Panamia. And we, never really went anywhere. But that was, a couple of us, it was the first time we'd ever played instruments. And so we just, strung this backyard hooligan band together and started churning out some punkish hardcore with metal tinge type stuff. And started playing shows, and you meet people along the way. And one of my favorite local bands at the time was actually called Shadyside, a screamo band. And I went to a lot of their shows and hounded them because they had a singer when I first saw them. Then they didn't have a singer anymore and were just a 4-piece. And I was like, let's see. So I harassed them, just said, let me try out. Let me try out for you guys, blah, blah, blah. And eventually they caved in and let me try. And I joined the band, and we had a more successful run, I suppose, and, cut a record in Nashville and did some touring. And they're still good friends, and we're actually putting a record out this year as well on what's Austin's label called? Mind Over Matter. So that'll be coming out too. And we just wanted to get back together over COVID and do another record for shits and giggles and see what happened. And I actually really enjoyed the process, and we brought kind of new, different energy to it than the old Shadyside. It's a little more direct, and it's more punk influence, I suppose. Very much different from the Burial Clouds stuff,
How long had it been since you guys played?
Oh man, like over a decade. We did like some random reunion shows at times, but I mean, it's probably like 17 years, man.
Wow.
So it was a trip.
That must have been a trip.
It really was. Yeah. and also to get back in the practice space and just realize that it all still kind of gels was pretty wild, and we did a couple of reunion shows just to let people know we've got a record coming out recently. And it was easy and fun and good to hang with the old dudes.
How much touring did you do back in the day?
Oh, it was by no means like a grueling touring situation. I mean, we did more like, because we were all working, and did like weekend type tours, 3 or 4 shows, and then, you take a break and do it again.
How old are you while all this is happening?
21, 22. Yeah, we worked together for it was about 4 or 5 years, but it was around early 20s.
Yeah, I did the same thing. I tried to go to college, and I I failed out. Half because of partying and half because of just not trying at all. And then I went out on tour with a friend's band and, selling merch. And I would rather do that than go to school.
Yeah, this makes sense. Yeah. Well, it's the thing is we encourage, we encourage kids to jump before they're ready. And it's a real crime, man, because we're like encouraging so much debt that so many people just will never be able to crawl out of. It's good for people to have the chance to live their lives a little bit before and find their passions before they jump.
Exactly. And you know what? So many people I know talk about school loans and how they'll never pay them off and how they hope they get taken away in some bill that gets passed or something. And I'm like, you know what? I don't have to worry about that because I didn't go to college. It's all working out for me. No, but so you're in Shadyside, you're performing. What happens? Does that band end up breaking up?
Yeah, so I basically around that time got into a play, begrudgingly at first, but ended up really enjoying it.
And talk about that. Like, how did that opportunity come about?
I did some like kids playhouse productions when I was a kid, and the director I'd worked with way back then, when I was like 8, was doing some crazy puppetry commedia dell'arte thing at the community college down the way, and he wanted me to audition for it. And I was like, man, I'm not doing that, man. I was in like 3 bands at the time, but I checked out the script. I thought it was weird and interesting, and I auditioned, got the role of the villain, and I got some accolades and local awards for my performance, and it just kind of gave me a little, I suppose, validation and a boost. And I was like, man, maybe I could do this. It was just a kind of fun thing to do in the summer. But I started auditioning for drama schools. I'm a dual citizen, so I thought, like, if I'm going to go, I want to go like across an ocean. So I auditioned for schools in England only and got into Lambda, London Academy of Music and Dramatic Arts, and did my BA there. And it was just a clean break. And it was tough because I had to tell the band we were just kind of picking up steam. But I knew that something in my heart wasn't there, at that point. I needed to do more. I needed to get out. I people were saying, you're great. And I never believed them. I was like, no, I'm not. I have more to do. And so I made that break, and that was history. And I just basically got a one-way ticket to the UK, and I lived there for most of the rest of my 20s and about 8 or 9 years before coming back to the States. So
your teacher remembered you from a grade school production?
Oh, yes. My talents were amazing back then. No, it's a small town. He's from Yellow Springs too, a little community I talked about. So, I'd see him around town and stuff. So I was in his consciousness already. It wasn't for my work back then, I'm sure. He probably had seen the stuff I was doing with the band, and I suppose who I was as a human, which maybe is what he wanted to steal.
Yeah, I was thinking maybe you made like such a big splash when you were 8 that he had to have you back.
It's been downhill since, man.
So when you're in that first production, I mean, do you get acting lessons? How do you get into this character? How do you learn to do what you have to do?
Well, back then, I mean, that was when I started doing my first acting classes, like actual classes, which was the community college that I did the production at was offering classes. So I thought I would just get into the plays and be able to take classes. And I took a bunch of other like bullshit classes like poetry and yoga, which actually aren't bullshit, obviously. But, I wasn't doing scholarly things. I wasn't trying to get a degree. But yeah, I started taking classes there. And that was all I'd done before that particular performance. And then obviously you go to train, and it's a super intensive BA program, and you do all the stuff.
Did you find it difficult to learn the craft, or did you get into it pretty easy? Like, talk about some of your process.
Well, I mean, at the beginning, a lot of people's perception of being a performer is like, hey, look at me, and wanting to show people how much you enjoy it and relish and everything. And I think it's a common mistake when people are starting out. And one of the biggest lessons I learned was you're enough as you are. It's interesting when you see somebody walk out on stage and they're not doing anything, but they're just thinking. It's fascinating. And you're literally hanging on to small little movements that show you what they're feeling inside, And it took a while to tame the Malarkey beast that started training, because I was definitely very physical. Yeah, I mean, my process now is an accumulation of various things that I've picked up along the way, stuff from my training, stuff that I've learned through working with really great actors, and also mentors I've had along the way, and just life lessons. about how to behave, and how to work well in a group. Because it's like, it's okay to be good, but if you're an asshole, no one wants to work with you. You know what I mean?
Did you have certain tics you had to drop that teachers pointed out to you or stuff like that?
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, I was from Ohio doing training in London. So everything was diction, we can't hear you. You're talking out the side of your mouth, like shit like that. Because, in Ohio, you're talking out the side of your mouth all the time. There was definitely elements of the way I was speaking, but also the way I was holding tension. And I think you don't realize you do it, but everybody, some people do obviously, but you don't realize where you're holding tension until you see yourself on camera for the first time doing a scene, and you're like, wow, my shoulders are literally locked, or my jaw. I had a lot of jaw tension. That was my issue. I'd get stressed and I'd clench. There's probably other things too. Still have them. There's still things that I watch, because we do self-tapes here. That's basically what auditioning has turned into. You don't really meet in the room since COVID, and they haven't really got back to doing in-person auditions. So we have to watch ourselves all the time when we're selecting tapes. And you do find stuff that you tend to do. And if you can let go of them and come from a more neutral place, sometimes you can find the character in a more interesting way.
Yeah, it's like whack-a-mole. New things always pop up, or the same things pop up, and you got to squash them again.
That's right. Yep.
I hear what you're saying about acting. I took a class in 2018, 19, and we ended up putting on a stage play. And my idea of acting was, I don't know, like big, showy pretending or something like that. But the lesson that took me a while, because, I had a character, right? And I was so locked into how I thought it should be and exactly how I should say every line. And I had to let go of all that and throw it away. And I don't know how it happened, but then I had the realization that acting is real. Like you're accessing those real feelings. You are expressing real emotion. You are in the moment. It's not like, hey, look at me, I'm putting on this show. And I don't know, I guess some people do that in some sense. And
some styles of theater also are a little more like that, I suppose, and panto, right, and shit like that. But
or like maybe musicals or something, but real acting is real. Yeah,
you have to believe, man. I mean, that's all it is, in my opinion. I mean, it's as simple and as hard as that. You just have to be. I mean, it's what Stanislavski, one of the great dramaturgs, said. The magic if I am this person in this situation, how would I feel and how would I behave? So you have to really be able to transport yourself into the skin of another. And I mean, that's also I suppose it's kind of psychedelic, really, if you think about it.
It is. One of the most fascinating things is just staying in the moment, in the character. Because, we'd be up there doing something and the teacher would be like, why are you over here? Would you do that in real life? You're in this situation. And it's just like, it's like a trip to just stay in it.
It is. And you can overthink it too. You can overthink it. I mean, it's finding that balance of letting the work go once you've done the work as well. I think some people can be so set on the work that they've done that if anything shifts, it throws them completely. You have to be able to be bendable, malleable, I suppose, and take whatever is thrown your way as the character. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. You have to be comfortable with just being a fool, basically.
Yeah. Yep.
Which I'm most of the time I'm so obsessed with like not looking stupid or sounding stupid or everything. But when I was doing the little bit of acting I did, that's my job. So whatever embarrassing thing I had to do, throw myself around on stage, sing a song, I just did it because I'm like, this is my job.
Excellent. Yeah, you got to be cringe, man. Be cringe and go home.
Every day. Now, so when you went to London Academy, do you have to audition to get in there?
Oh yeah. It's a big process. I had to go. There were auditions in New York and Chicago. And I auditioned for different schools. So the one for Lambda was in Chicago, actually. And you do the preliminary rounds where they come out to see the potential talent in the wasteland of America. And so you go into this dark ass theater, just one guy sitting in the back with a notepad, and you have to do, what was it, 2 contrasting monologues, one contemporary and one classical text or something like that. And then they were like, okay, thank you. You'll hear back from us or not. And yeah, so the next round I had to fly to London and do the audition there. I had to do duologues with a current Lambda student, as well as more monologues. And I think there were like some kind of workshop that you had to take part in too. But yeah, I remember getting the call. I was working at Red Lobster, bro. in Beaver Creek, Ohio. And I remember seeing the phone ring, and it was a London number. Flipped out, ran to the bathrooms, took the call, and he told me I was in. It was a crazy moment, man. Crazy moment in time.
Must have been the best feeling, huh?
It was. Especially in a Red Lobster toilet.
From Red Lobster to London Academy of Music and Dramatic Art in London. You gotta love it.
Yeah.
Did you tell any of your Red Lobster coworkers like what you were doing? What was their reaction?
I must have. I mean, I can't remember. I was a massive stoner at the time, so my memory bank is pretty vacant around those years. But I must have done. Yeah, they probably didn't understand it fully.
So, talk about going over there. That must have been pretty scary, right? One-way ticket. I assume you're by yourself, yes?
Yeah.
Were you terrified?
I wasn't terrified. I mean, I was born in Beirut, actually, in Lebanon. And, you know, I've been traveling ever since then. We'd go away for summers, and I was pretty traveled up to that point. So I wasn't scared about it. I think the thing that became intimidating, I suppose, was feeling like a misfit. Not that was new to me, but on a grand scale in a city with millions of people in it, coming from Dayton, which was the biggest city I'd ever lived in before that. And, you know, the trains and buses and everything, but also being understood, you know, like I said, I had that Ohio drawl. And so it just became very hard. I felt like I was always having to repeat myself, and it drove me nuts for a bit. And so my accent naturally assimilated a bit over the years. Now there's certain echoes of it, but maybe about 5 years ago, it was very, very transatlantic. But no, I mean, I'm used to being an outsider. I went to a lot of different schools, and I'm comfortable with that. I like it.
Okay.
You know?
Yeah. So you're not a complete fish out of water. You had some world travel in you. You were ready for this.
Yeah. It was a logical next step, I think, if we're talking biography.
So from that school, you end up getting in some stage plays, and the career is slowly building, right? Yeah.
I picked up an agent after our last showcase and started working. It took about a year. I started working in pubs and doing random events and things like that. Started playing out again as well, like little live, little acoustic thing. And eventually, I got my first play, which was a double bill of Beyond the Horizon and Spring Storm at the Royal and Durngate in Northampton, which ended up transferring to the National Theatre in London, which was a huge deal. I was playing the lead in both plays. And so for my first proper gig, I found myself like straight into the frying pan, you know, at the National for a sold out run. And it was definitely nerve-wracking at first, because this is the place I'd always wanted to perform at. It was like the place I wanted to perform at, to be honest. And it was great. I learned so much. I felt like I was still training during that whole run, because I was learning new things every day. And also being around an institution like that, where they're just churning out plays and they have great actors come through. You know, you meet people like, you know, Ben Cumberbatch and Simon Russell Beale in the hallways. You're like, what's up? You know, all these people, and you're like part of this theater institution all of a sudden. It was extremely imposter syndrome-y for me at first.
You know, you realize it's just a community like any other. Like the play I was in, it was the first play I'd been in since 6th grade, and I got the lead in it. So I felt like I was thrown in the frying pan. And you're with great actors. Like some of them have been in a lot of stuff, some of them haven't. And then, you know, weeks later, I see them in little bit parts on TV, and I'm like, oh my God, this is like, wow, this is just another scene like any other.
It's wild, man. I mean, that astounds me too, because, you know, I'll watch movies or shows, and there's always someone I know or my friend knows or something like that. And it would have seemed so far-fetched back in the day. But, you know, the more you work, the more the circle expands. And it's as simple as that. You work with different people who know other people, and all of a sudden you look back and you're like, wow, I've kind of come a long way.
How did you get those initial gigs? Did you have the agent already?
Yeah.
Oh, so there you go.
Yeah, it was through my agency in London.
How does that work? Do you meet people through the school and then you get hooked up with an agent? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, the top drama schools always do a series of showcases for the final year students, several plays. Usually each actor will have an opportunity to have a somewhat decent role in at least one of the productions. And that's the one that you normally target to invite people to. But they come to a lot of them because it's one of the top schools. So, I got interest from the show that I probably had more of the bigger role in. Nice.
And you continued playing music throughout this, yes?
I did, yeah.
You said just playing solo gigs here and there?
Yeah, well, actually, I got my time mixed up a little bit. I started doing the music playing at least. I was writing the whole time, but I started playing when I got the role of Elvis Presley, that guy.
I've heard of him, yeah.
It's supposed to be pretty good.
Yeah.
In $1 Million Quartet, the original London production, which was about Sun Records. And it was another one where I was like, how did I get this role? This is ridiculous. I was reading for Johnny Cash. I thought that was more suitable, but yeah, I booked Elvis and I was like, okay, guess I got to do this thing. And it was a real stretch of, I grew a lot as a musician through that. I also was doing Elvis 56. So and I'm a bass baritone. So I was having to really reach for That's All Right Mama and the other old school tracks. So it pushed my range a bit. It also, I was playing every night for a year, and 2,000 people. And it just kind of gave me that extra nudge being like, yo, you could, why aren't you doing this with your music, dude? Do it. You like your songs. Surely other people will, at least some people will connect with them. So around that time, I started playing at random open mics and set up a couple solo shows. And yeah.
When you're playing those shows, are you playing as you or Elvis?
No, I'm playing as me. Yeah, I'd play only just originals. Like, I don't really do cover songs or anything. I've done maybe 2 in my life. Just never had an interest to do other people's stuff.
When you're playing those solo gigs, does that help you out with the role, like preparing as Elvis too?
No, I always kind of felt like it was a separate thing.
So, okay, they're separate things.
And I kind of started doing it 3/4 of the way through the run because I was pretty focused during that time, trying to kind of stay on task,
When you first started playing solo gigs, was it difficult for you? I've done one solo acoustic gig ever, and I feel that it did not go very well, but I didn't put enough time in, and I covered a Sparta song, and I feel like that was not very good either, but I got through it. I didn't stop and forget a song or something. Like, it wasn't a disaster like that. I just felt like I wasn't very good, but how was it for you?
Yeah, I mean, well, we get in our own heads, don't we?
Yeah.
And, for me, I've never been I'm a good guitar player, but I've never thought of myself as a great guitar player. And especially when I was starting out, I had a lot of my brain focused on not messing up the guitar parts because I always used to write a lot of stuff that I could barely play, a lot of weird finger picking stuff. And it just, I like stuff that's not straight down the barrel, and so, yeah, I always felt slightly like I wasn't there for at least the first half of the show because I was so focused on trying to get it right. And it took a long time for that to stop. Now, if anything, I'll have the first song or 2, and then I'm in it. I'm back.
I mean, like anything else, you just have to keep doing it until you figure it out.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's the secret to success, man. In a way.
That's it.
Yeah.
You have, and I say this on the show all the time, you have to embrace being bad. There's no shortcuts. Everyone goes through their growth period.
You don't learn if you don't fuck up.
Exactly.
And I think my greatest life lessons are when I've put myself out there and I have fallen on my ass and had to pick myself up and go, I'm not going to do that again.
Yeah, exactly. I strive for perfection. So when bad things happen now, I try to remind myself, you will learn from this. It's not the end of the world.
It's important to have that voice, though. Not everyone has
Yes.
that voice. You have to tap into that subconscious, and that the subconscious is never fearful. It's never intimidated. It's not this, that, and the other. It observes. So if you can tap into your powers of observing yourself, then you can actually change those parts, right? At least in my experience, in my hippie life.
No, I'm with you on that. And I think if the desire is strong enough for whatever you're doing, you will continue doing it. Like yourself, you kept performing in bands, you kept up with music, you pursued acting, you're moving to London to learn the craft at this school, you are continuing with stage plays. Like there's things in my life I've done once and it didn't go well, and I'm like, well, that's it. Like I tried DJing before, I didn't know what I was doing, I stopped. I tried stand-up comedy for a while, I really didn't like it, I stopped. But acting I took as far as I could, and music has always been a thing. So if you're really in it, if your heart's truly in it, you will just continue doing it like you have.
Yeah, well, there's something that prevents you from stopping. It's this engine inside of you that's just like constantly seeing the world or feeling the world in that way. And for me, it's through music. It's just how I connect with the world and myself, I suppose. And I can't turn that off. I can turn it off for a bit when I need to take a job and pay the bills or whatever, but like it always comes back creeping. If I have a shit week and I realize I haven't played guitar for a week, it's usually why. I play and it sorts it out.
Music has always been the constant in my life, and it sounds like yours too. I did the opposite thing. I wasted a lot of years getting high and just dropping out of life. And then once I stopped doing that, I picked music back up. And then I was trying desperately to hold this band together that I had put together, and it just wasn't working. And at the same time, the acting class and the play came up. So, I felt life taking me in that direction. So I went in that direction. And then music became a priority again. So I put acting behind and circled back to music. And it sounds like you've done the same thing, like you're in music, right? Acting, you feel your life guiding you toward the acting, and then you go in that direction. I think we just need to listen to what the world is telling us, and go with that.
That's true, man. I mean, and I believe in serendipity to a degree. So, sometimes doors open, or sometimes you see a door and you wonder if you should open it or not. And, it's how, just to segue to Burial Clouds, this record we got coming out. That's kind of how that happened. It just sort of fell into my lap in a weird way. And I was like, let's go for it. Let's give it a shot.
Talk about that. How did you hook up with this band? When did it happen? How did it happen?
Yeah, so it was over COVID. I had just taken a very long RV trip with my family because we couldn't fly to a house that we bought blind because times were fucking weird, man. And we got here, got to the house, and I wanted to scream. I mean, it's as simple as that. No, not as simple as that, but
Wait, did you want to scream because you wanted to create music, or did you want to scream because the house was a piece of crap?
No, not because of that, but because of the current situation and politics, all the bullshit that was going on. But also, I really, all the music I was listening to at that time was heavy music. I was getting really back into digging again as well, like finding out new bands, finding out all the new labels. And I kind of got back into that record store mentality. And I just wanted to do it again. I missed it. And so, basically I was on, this is somewhat ridiculous, but Ben Kohler, I've become kind of friends with him online over the years, and, met him a couple times. He's a good dude. And I saw this comment on one of his pages from this handle called Burial Clouds, as I was probably doom scrolling. Remember, it's 2020. And the comment was clever and amusing. And I was like, you know what? Who are these guys? This looks like a band. And I clicked on it. And right on the front of their bio, it said we're looking for a singer. But they were based in Portland. So I was like, okay, I'll check the record out. Let's see. And so I checked it out. And immediately I just got this rush of like, this sounds like ISIS chords, it's got that sludgy grunge energy as well. I felt like it was a killer mashup of influences that I really knew and dug. So I just reached out and I was like, yo, I'm based in Atlanta, so you probably are going to say no, but you mind if I try to throw some vocals on one of these tracks? And they were like, yeah, go ahead. And I did. And we worked back and forth a bit. They asked me to like cut the vocals at one point, try something new here, and I did. And they dug it. And then I ended up just doing the whole record like that from my garage before flying out there and cutting the record at a cabin in Portland. And that was the beginning of it.
When did you fly out there to record?
It would have been about probably a year later or something. So 20. Actually, it was the beginning of 2022.
Okay. I'm trying to place the timeline in terms of COVID because, it's like, well, number one, I can't comprehend time anymore because of the 2 years we lost. Yeah. But I'm just curious about people, how people navigate during that time and what's going on.
Yeah. Yeah, it was 2022 spring.
So by 2022, things are open back up. We can fly there, no problem, right?
Yeah.
So what was it like? Had you met the band in person at all? Was this the first time you were going to meet them when you flew out there to record?
It was. And, it's one of those things where you trust the universe, I suppose, because it could have really been horrible. You get there and these guys stink, et cetera.
Yeah.
But, I got a good vibe initially from Matt, who's our main songwriter and who coined Burial Clouds, who's just a phenomenal musician, but also just super humble and full of ideas. And, like me, it's all about best idea wins. My ego has been smashed through being an actor over the years. So I'm a fan of just throwing shit off, throwing shit at the wall and seeing what works. And he was game for that. So we'd send stuff back and forth. I'd say, dude, tell me if anything sucks, I'll redo it. It's just a first investigation. And so I got a really good vibe from him just as a person. And I think my radar is pretty good for humanity. And then, I flew in and we did it. But which is the crazy part about this is, you remember I told you about that band, Panamia, first band I started?
Yes.
So our first guitarist in that band, Aaron, he lives in Portland too. And then I heard Matt was looking for an additional guitarist for Burial Clouds. I put him forward, and now he's in the band. So
You're kidding me.
So I have a dude who was in my original band in the band with me as well, which is a wild turn of events. And talk about serendipity, you know what I mean?
It's so weird how life works out like that sometimes, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think you got to embrace it when it does.
Yeah. And this is an important lesson in not being afraid to say yes. Like, I remember when my friend asked me to go to that acting class, my first initial thought was to say no. And I'm so happy I didn't, because it's like the one Cinderella story in my life, go to the class for the first time, do a scene for the first time, everyone's blown away. Here, you have the lead in the play, just like that. And that's a memory I'll cherish forever. And you with this band, like they live in Portland, you live in Atlanta. I'm sure you're super busy. So maybe you thought, like, am I even going to have time for this? Can I pull it off? But you took a chance and now it's working out. Yeah.
The biggest hitch obviously is like touring and stuff like that, but we're just trying to cross these bridges as they come. I have this thing where I'll sometimes shut things down because I'm foreseeing, problems, you know what I mean? Like, well, that's not going to work. I'm going to be a disappointment because I'll have to pull out of this or whatever. And it's like, you just got to go and see what happens and cross each bridge as you come to it. Because otherwise you sacrifice potential life experiences,
Do it and see if people are willing to work with you, And
right.
Obviously it sounds like these guys are willing to work with you and you're willing to work with them. So let's take it as far as we can go, right?
Yeah, and I gave him full transparency as well. I was like, look, my life is very hectic. I also have young kids right now. If you wanted to go with another singer because of that, if you're looking to like do really extensive touring and stuff, do it. But I think we all just believed so firmly in this record and what we'd created together that it didn't matter. It's like, we're at least creating this piece of art that we can share with people. Hopefully we'll get to play out more than we are. And, but at the end of the day, it's all about sharing something, it's a gift to the world, I suppose.
Have you performed live with the band yet?
Yeah, we did our first shows when the first single had dropped out in the Pacific Northwest.
Where'd you play? How was it?
It was High Water Mark, Portland, and Substation, Seattle. It was great. The only hitch is we're kind of in between drummers. It was terrible timing. So we were like, let's just do it anyway, and let's use processed drums and a smoke machine instead of the drum kit. But it actually worked. I mean, we had time to embed it, and it actually sounded really good. But the shows we got coming up this weekend are we've got a drummer on board, so that'll be a different experience. But yeah, it went well, man. I was pleasantly surprised, especially because I just flew in one night, practiced once for the first time with this band, and then we're doing shows. So I was a little stressed about that just because I hadn't had time to embed it. And also without having a drummer there, I found it very bizarre. I just I'm so used to feeling a drummer for timing, not only visually, but just the energy, and without that, it was almost like you had to, I don't know. It was weird, but it ended up working. Once you knew that was what was going on, you kind of sit with it and it works.
Where do you practice the songs, record the songs? Like, how does it work?
Well, they practiced at a practice space in Portland instrumentally.
Yeah.
And here I don't practice. I just turn up and fucking shred, man. I mean, I'll do a couple run throughs with my PA in the garage and just blast it through the speaker, just to kind of make sure it's still there. But I mean, the thing is, when you write everything and go through an extensive demoing and recording process, the songs are pretty in your bones,
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So at that point, you just know what you need to do.
Yeah. I mean, the thing for me was kind of, I'm used to performing as myself, as a more whatever artist my solo stuff is. And it's kind of rewiring the intensity and the energy. And I don't know, it's like you under a magnifying glass when you're doing heavy music. You have to kind of lift it out a little bit more, I suppose. And I used to do it. So it just took me a minute, and I was like, oh yeah, it's this thing. And your body and your voice steps back into that, suit, I suppose. You,
I know that you have been performing solo for quite some time. I think since 2014, right? At least,
yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, was there ever a period where you had to walk away from music for a number of years before you picked it back up, or have you always been performing at least solo some of the times?
When I've I did a show called Project Blue Book, which was about the whole Air Force alien situation of the 50s, right? It was a period piece where I was, one of the two main guys. So that was a very all-encompassing shoot, very grueling, but amazing. But during that time, like when I'm shooting, I'm out. It's out. I won't be performing, but I do have my laptop in the dressing room, and if I have long breaks, I'll get in and work on some music. But usually during those times, I take a break. But yeah, I do a lot of full band tours as well. I've toured with full band shows across Europe several times, and the first solo tour I did was actually last year. I've never toured solo before, just one-off shows here and there. It's usually with the band when I tour.
So first full solo tour was last year?
I think so. 2022.
Oh, wow.
2022. Yeah.
How did that go?
Yeah, it was good. But it was one of these also where COVID was just finishing up, and I'd been living reclusively on my lot here, and it was getting back into a crowd of people right in front of you staring at you was actually a bit uncomfortable. I had my first show. It was a very intimate kind of warm up show, and it was packed house, and I found it. I went into early Conor Oberst mode, but it took a minute, and then I got back into it, just like anything, riding a bike.
Yeah, it's there's been years where I haven't picked up a guitar, or years between bands, but once you get back into it and start drilling it, it comes back very quickly, I find.
Mm-hmm. I think so too.
So with that tour, was that to support your EP that came out last year, Strays?
Yeah, Strays. And I've got another one in the works. It kind of had a setback with it. It was supposed to be coming out earlier this year or mid-year, but I kind of changed tact with the engineer and kind of reworking it a little bit. So, but I do have a bunch of solo stuff that's being finished in June. So there will be another EP coming out soon too. Don't know when, but sometime.
So yeah, and I also want to remind everyone to check out Burial Clouds. Now, we have 2 singles out now, Beirut Shores and Cloud Splitter. But by the time this comes out, by the time you hear these words I'm saying right now, Last Days of a Dying World will be out on Church Road Records. And Michael, I really like the band. I mean, what you described earlier, it's like the perfect blend of ISIS style, post-metal, post-rock, whatever you want to call it. And I like the really grungy parts. It's like like the dirtier sounding Nirvana type songs. And there's a touch of doom as well. And I don't really like doom metal. It's just not my thing. It's too slow. But, when you mix in that element with everything else Burial Clouds has going on, I really like it. So I'm really looking forward to hearing the whole record.
That's awesome to hear, man. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. The thing is with doom, there's some great doom out there, but a lot of it's predictable. And I think what we wanted to do with this, and I think why they were interested in working with me is kind of trying to humanize it a bit more. Because my initial thing with doing vocals, I thought I'd just be doing more monotone screaming over top of it. And he was like, "No, you should use some of the stuff that you've got in your toolkit, man. Like, why waste that?" And I was like, "Okay, well, give it a go." And I mean, it took a minute to really find that sound because it's a lot of different singing styles. And my initial worry was like, is that going to be too eclectic? Will it all tie together? You know what I mean?
It does.
Yeah.
That's another thing that surprised me. I expected, I just without knowing anything, I expected just a straight ahead heavy band for whatever reason. But then I listened to the song and it starts off very slow and you're singing and I'm like, oh, it's this kind of band. And then later it gets heavier and you're screaming and I'm like, oh, and it does work together very well, seamlessly. It's not just like, sometimes when a band has different sounds, it could be like, it's like on the chopping block, like here's this part, here's this part, but this isn't like that. It's very seamless.
Well, that's amazing to hear.
What kind of things do you write about as the frontman?
Well, I'd been getting into a lot of history and geopolitics and a lot of stuff that was happening and that has always been happening in the Middle East. And I kind of wanted to find a way to, I don't know, sing about that stuff in a kind of convoluted, poetic way. And it felt forced when I was doing it with my solo stuff. And I felt like this was a great avenue for me to explore that a bit. So, there's a lot of big themes hidden inside the colorful imagery, this very anti-imperialist take on things. But yeah, I kind of like to keep it in that realm slightly. The music's cinematic and epic. So I feel like that kind of thing supports that content. And I also just didn't want to talk about myself. I think maybe the word I is in there maybe 2 or 3 times the whole record. I wanted it to be about us, not about me.
Yeah, I feel that because I've written about myself so much over the years that I get sick of it. So whatever bad thing I went through recently, like that'll be in parts of the songs.
Right.
Or I'll just pull an abstract thing from another piece of art and make it my own, or I don't know, whatever is on my mind.
Yeah. And I mean, that's kind of how I'd been operating with my solo stuff up until recently too. And I suppose I've been wanting to branch out with that as well. And I haven't even been using the guitar for the new EP. It's all written on, I don't know if I said this already, but it's all been written on like bass and synth and drums and things. So,
oh yeah.
And yeah, I wanted to kind of push it out of the singer-songwriter realm a bit, because it just, you get bored. You get bored. And I found when I pick up the guitar, I'll often, your hands have their limitations, right? And you end up falling into similar chord progressions and patterns, and then your voice automatically goes into that style. And I've just found it so annoying at a certain point. So I was like, well, how do I break this up? And I think a big part of it was putting down the guitar and working with keys, and it just opened up some different ideas and ways of singing, and loosened things up. So the new stuff is a little looser. It's a little more like Bowie-ish at times. It's got kind of R&B elements to it. Like, it's kind of eclectic still and indie sounding, but it's definitely different than the stuff we've heard before.
I like that. Yeah, I mean, we're one person with one mind, right? We can only do so much, especially on guitar, because there's just not a whole lot you can do for anybody. There's a limited number of chords. So I think it's good to experiment and try other stuff.
Yeah, and I was around that time too. I was talking to friends. I was like, yo, send me shit. Send me shit I could put vocals on. Send me beats, whatever. I'll flow. I don't care. Give me something so I can break myself out of this mold, And I mean, it's around that time, because I was reaching out to different people, that I was looking to find something like this, I suppose, like Burial Clouds, where I could get people to send me stuff that's super intricate and have a chance to fuck around with it.
When you record solo, do you play everything?
When I record my demos, yeah. But in the studio, it depends. I mean, there's like on Strays, it was just me and my producer playing everything. Grave Racer, which is my last full-length LP, I demoed the whole thing, writing almost all the parts, and then had my musicians come in and lay them down properly. Because I can play the bass, but I can't play it like my guy. So, but yeah, I definitely have very not descriptive, but full demos where I'll write out all the parts.
How did Burial Clouds hook up with Church Road? Did you send them the record after it was recorded, or was there a pre-existing relationship?
So we cut the record, we did it ourselves, and then started pitching it. It pretty much went down like that. And I reached out to the select labels that I had either contacts in or new bands on them. And Church Road was the one that came back around the quickest. And I knew their reputation. I knew their records. The label's fantastic. They just are putting out killer records time and again. And they're also branching out like in style. So it's quite eclectic, their roster.
Oh, yeah. I mean, just great company to be in on that label. And I've had a lot of their bands on my show. So excellent stuff. Yeah.
And they're great people, genuinely good people. And we do have a mutual friends, two mutual friends. I don't know if you know the group A.A. Williams out of the UK, but we've toured together and stuff. And they used to be on Holy Roar, which I believe Justine also used to be on. And so they had that connection. And it was one of those things like, hey, are they cool? They're like, yeah, they're really cool. And that was enough for me.
Yeah, Church Road inherited a lot of the Holy Roar bands, or some of them, right?
Yeah.
So we've got the Burial Clouds record coming out. We've got more solo music to look forward to. What about in terms of acting? I mean, I'm sure there's a lot going on there as well, right? Yes, maybe?
Also got the Shadyside record. I might as well plug that while we're here. Yeah, the Shadyside record, which will be coming out this year too. Don't know when yet, but watch this space. Over and out. Acting-wise, let's see. I'm doing a movie with a buddy here in Atlanta, and there's the writer's strike right now. So a lot of stuff is on hold. So I'm kind of in a bit of a limbo situation, just waiting for things to kick back up and for the studios to get their shit together and pay people properly. But yeah, it's kind of in limbo right now. I just did some Law and Order this year. I did a few episodes of Organized Crime, which was fun. And just waiting for the next gig.
How did you transition from the stage to television? Does that start in the UK, or do you fly back here and start that up?
It started in the UK. I did a couple like really horrible drama documentaries. Dreadful. In my first short film, where he talked about noticing your tension. I was playing a cowboy in it, and my accent was all in my mouth. It was painful to watch. But yeah, there were some early TV things in the UK. I did also Mr. Sloan with Nick Frost and Olivia Colman, and a show in Ireland as well. I did a few bits, but then the big show that I got a part of was Vampire Diaries, which I had to fly back to the States for the first time in like 8 or 9 years. And that's what made me relocate back here. Otherwise, I probably would have stayed in London.
When did you figure out that role was going to be recurring and that you'd be a regular on the show?
So I got booked for, I think it was like a 3-episode arc, and went back home to the UK for Christmas and booked another job. And so due to the contract, because there was some crossover, I had to take that back to the Vampire Diaries cats, and they expressed the desire to keep me. And so they ended up kind of going back and forth, and I ended up sticking with them, flying back out, and they signed me on as a regular at that point. So I'd done 3 episodes, and then I ended up doing 4 seasons.
That's got to be great, right? I'm sure the pay is better, and it's a steady gig, which is not the easiest thing in the world to get when you're acting.
I'd love one right now. I've got repairs to do on my house. You hear that, y'all? But yeah, no, it was the first time I'd had a steady TV gig, and the first time I'd been paid like that before. So it's definitely hard to go back to theater after you get paid like that. But as with anybody who's not used to having money, I fucked it up. Not completely, but man, if I could turn back time, I would have cut certain things out of my life, et cetera, et cetera.
So you fucked it up in terms of finances, you're saying?
Yeah, I just, you get to that point where you're not checking receipts, and you're getting messy, and you have some dough, so you're just like, well, I'll get this today, I'll get that, and so you just end up just being stupid with it.
See, that's what I was going to ask you, if you're good with saving money and finances and all that stuff, because I think especially as an actor and someone working in the arts full time, you have to be to some degree.
You should. I'm not. I've had to learn that the hard way,
Yeah. That's a hard lesson that I learn over and over. There'll be times where I'm flush and I just order stuff. Oh, I need this. Oh, I need that. I got a pile of Amazon boxes in my living room that I haven't even opened, like pieces of equipment that cost hundreds of dollars. And then all of a sudden it's gone and the high wears off, and I'm like, oh no, I have to
sell that shit. Sell it now.
I have to be frugal again.
Yeah. I mean, it's a bizarre profession in that respect. Everyone thinks you're loaded when you're an actor and they know who you are, but it's not the case. Also more money, more problems, right?
Of course, yeah.
But also our jobs are so sporadic. You could have a year you don't work at all, and then all you're doing is eating away at the money you made on the last job. So it's this real crazy roller coaster ride, not only financially, but psychosomatically.
But you're in the good position that it seems like you're landing fairly regular good roles, right? You've had a recurring character on the show for 3 years. That's great, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, a lot of actors, it could go either way. Like some people knock it out of the park right away, right when they start. Like look at Brendan Fraser. He had a pretty storied career. Things were taken off right away. And then there's other actors. You see like Bryan Cranston, he's doing bit parts and TV shows. And then 40, 20, 30 years later or whatever lands Breaking Bad, and that sends him off into the stratosphere. It's like it can go in any number of directions.
Yeah. It's so true. And I think, a lot of the common stories there are perseverance.
Exactly.
Pushing through, at great odds sometimes. But yeah, it's a wild one. I mean, I go through phases where it's too annoying to have to be sitting around waiting. You have to kind of create your own stuff, I suppose. My only issue is I end up doing that with music when, there's always this voice in my head going, why aren't you doing what you do with music with acting? Create your own projects, get them off the ground, it'll pay you more. But I just can't get away from the music. It means a lot to me, and it keeps me sane.
That's a good point too. Like there's a lot of actors who, they get put in a couple movies and it's not working out. So they write their own thing, and that sends them off into the stratosphere. Have you had any ideas or have you ever tried to put something down on paper?
Yeah, I've written a script, which I plan to direct and act in someday. I should probably make that day soon before I lose interest. That's my issue also, is I'll have I'm a sprinter, and I get super excited about a project, an idea, and I run, and I crush it, and I get it all to a place where I love it. And if nothing happens at a certain point, and I don't look at that thing for half a year, it's dead to me. And it's something I got to work on. I know it's a flaw, we'll call it. Don't leave your pretty things behind, man.
Scripts take decades sometimes to even make it to getting filmed.
So true.
Yeah.
But I will one day.
You could be sitting on the next Rocky. I mean, come on.
It's the exact plot. No, I'm joking. Yeah, I will one day. I mean, with Blue Book, I was going to direct the season 3 before it ended. So I definitely had it on my plate as something that I was going to get into. And then everything, like you said, got weird, took 3 years out, and, a lot of reevaluations happened. And yeah, I just got to get that moving again. Thanks for reminding me.
No problem. I'm here for you, Michael.
Thanks, bro. Thanks.
Do you audition? How does it work? Does your agent bring you things and say, here it is? Or do you go and audition for big things? Is it a combination of both?
Usually my agents send me tapes every week for me to do and send back. But lately I've been booking a lot through just people I've worked with before and my own connections. The audition scene right now is pretty grim because they're not meeting you. They're just seeing your tape. I worry that it's a Tinder swipe fest. You're going to watch a few seconds and be like, nah, he don't look right. And yet we've spent hours trying to get this tape for you guys. You know what I mean? Yeah, you kind of have to be proactive in that respect and keep your connections and reach out to people you see they're working on something. Be like, yo, hey, is there a spot for me? And there's a part of you that has to be shameless in that respect, because I've been rewarded when I have been shameless in this respect, not every respect.
It's got to be hard in the beginning, because with acting, in bands, you maybe you have other people in the band, you have other people to back you up. But with acting, it's very surface, right? It's you on the tape, and the person watching it, giving you the role, can be like, wrong look, wrong voice, wrong physique. It's very apparent that it's just you that's not working. That's got to be hard probably to deal with in the beginning, right?
In the beginning, yes.
Yeah.
You realize later on what that's about, and it's nothing to do with you.
Right.
If you're good at what you do. They're thinking of so many different factors. They're thinking of the poster and what you look like next to the other lead. They're thinking about your eye color, stupid shit.
It's like the lottery. You just got to keep playing for years and years, and then you hope it's going to pay off at some point.
Unfortunately, it's a good analogy.
Well, look, Michael, you've already done so much. There's bound to be more good things coming.
There's more to come, baby.
That's right.
I'm ready.
That's right. So let's recap. Now, we got to check out the Burial Clouds record, Last Days of a Dying World. It's out there right now by the time you hear this. We want people to hear that, right, Michael?
Absolutely. Yeah, very excited for people to go on the journey.
And
Shadyside.
Is there a release date or anything for that yet?
There's not a release date. We're cooking ahead, though. We got the test pressings and everything, and we're just finalizing art. So it's coming. But that'll be on Mind Over Matter Records, hopefully in the fall.
And of course, there's Michael Malarkey solo.
Yep.
Strays, the EP, just came out last year, but you have quite a bit of music under your own name as well.
Yes, sir. Yep.
Yes. And if you want to see Michael in any of his roles, we've got several seasons of Vampire Diaries and a bunch of other stuff you've been in.
Yeah, check out Project Blue Book. That's a good one. You'll like that. It's Robert Zemeckis as well, so, you'll know that name.
Really?
Yeah.
I like that. That's the UFO thing you were talking about, right? Like the FBI UFOs in the 50s.
Yeah.
That sounds up my alley. I like that. I sometimes I dive in and research that stuff to try to figure out if it's real or not.
It's real.
When you were working on that, Michael, did the actual FBI or CIA come in and try to cover anything up?
Not at my level of awareness, but they did pull the plug on the show, so you never know.
Yeah, it could have been them.
Could have been.
I remember hearing back in the day when Independence Day came out, like the U.S. military was going to help the production until they found out they were going to mention Area 51, and then they withdrew their support.
Well, there's a dark history of infiltration in cinema, as you may or may not be aware of. You know, they have
Explain.
they have their paws on a lot of stuff. You know, and if you're going to be mentioning them, they will often add a scene or something that paints them in a little more of a good light. And it's, you know, it's obviously very much leaning on the we're the good guys and they're the bad guys type stuff, you know, which is obviously very one-sided at its least. So I won't go too far into that. You know, I want to keep working, but.
Oh, yeah. Maybe I was about to dive in more there, but you know what, Michael? I like you. I want you to continue working, and I want to remain alive. So you know what? Thumbs up to everybody. How about that?
Love it.
Well, Michael, this has been great. I want to thank you for taking the time to come on the show. Really looking forward to the new music. So thank you.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate you taking the time, man. Thank you all for listening.
And there you have it. Michael Malarkey. Great to talk to Michael. It's nice to be able to talk to somebody about acting and music. And he does both, and he does it well. You know, even before I was a music guy, I was way into film, television, acting. I wanted to be an actor. I wanted to be a director when I was in grade school. And then my love of music crept in and took over. So it's just great to hear about the craft, how he did it, how he went to school, the whole process. Fascinating to be able to hear that, in addition to the music he's been making his whole life. Burial Clouds. Have you heard the record yet? Last Days of a Dying World. Check it out. Super, super good stuff. Think like a grungier, doomier ISIS. It's, I really dig it. So yeah, just an overall great conversation. Great to talk to you, Michael. Thank you for coming on the show. All right, so let's check in. How are we doing? I'm doing okay. Okay. I'm suffering from burnout again. I'm doing too much, working all the time, not going out enough, not taking enough leisure time. But listen, that's the way it is right now. I'll fix it at some point. This weekend, it's pouring rain the whole weekend. So I'm making sure to take a lot of time for me because I felt myself bordering on burnout again yesterday, and I don't want that to happen. But the good news is the new scene has been mentioned in a couple of publications. The PRP quoted us in an article about Converge from our conversation with Kurt Ballou and their re-release of The Dusk in Us. So that was nice to get a mention there. And our interview with Dennis Lixen is making the rounds. That got mentioned on Metal Injection. They did an article about it. Thank you, Life from Loam, for pointing that out to me. I didn't even see it until you posted it. And now Lambgoat has written an article about the same interview. And they're quoting the part of the interview where Dennis is talking about how it's harder than ever for bands to make a living on the road or even tour anymore. I asked him if he thinks it's better now for bands than it was in the past, and he said, no. The long answer is way more complicated than that, because I think that being a touring musician has never been this hard, which is problematic because I think that in the years to come, you will see a lot of bands calling it quits, and you will see a lot of bands that will stop touring because it is almost impossible to make a living playing music. So I read the comments section for these articles, which I know is a mistake, but I had to. And a lot of people are missing the mark and coming down on Dennis, saying communist and socialist and, just quit your band or, all this other nonsense. So I want to clarify things and back up Dennis a little bit here. First of all, Dennis is out there advocating for you, for us, for common people. So why people would be against that, I have no idea. Okay? Listen to this guy. This guy from the Metal Injection comment section is just really, really not comprehending things. This comment is so dumb. I had to read it to you. Okay, this guy says, Refused had all these socialist and commie idealistic songs in the 90s. And now he has the gall to complain about the true outcome of those ideals? LOL. All the product of your efforts belongs to us now, Dennis, and I'll decide what it's worth for you, comrade. So, according to this guy's understanding, Dennis speaking out against capitalism and greed and advocating for small to mid-level bands means that he doesn't want them to make money. That's this gentleman's understanding. Wow. That's all I'll say about that. Okay. And a lot of people are saying, oh, well, just quit your band, or, oh, well, just get a job, or, oh, well, if you can't afford it, then don't do it. I think those are pretty close-minded statements to make. Now, like I talked about in the interview with Dennis, the cost of everything is rising. The cost of gas is rising. The cost of travel is rising. The cost of plane tickets is rising. Merch prices are rising. Record prices are rising. It takes a year to get a record. You go to the venue. You don't get any money from the ticket price. The venue wants to take a cut of merch now. The venue makes all this money on alcohol. The band doesn't get any cut of the bar. Everything is stacked against the artist. Same as it always was. And I think at the heart of what Dennis is saying is, or at least what I'm saying is, it doesn't have to be like that. Why does it have to be like that? Okay. Here's a counterpoint to Dumb Guy's comment. A guy named Keith in the Metal Injection comment section, that's not me, by the way. That's another Keith. He says, the record companies and the music industry are the band's worst enemies. If they can't pimp you out of 90% of the revenue you generate, then they shelve your albums, then lie that there isn't a market for your music or that tastes have changed. You are better off staying clear of the companies and being independent. With technology where it is, you can record, manufacture, and sell your own product. Jack White has his own operation now that he's clear of his previous label's obligations. You don't hear much about it because the parent companies of the music labels own the magazines, radio, and television stations. John Mayer is trying to get his own label off the ground. The silence is deafening. If they can't pimp the artists, they ignore them or try to ruin them. F the record companies. Now, this is more truthful to what's going on and what Dennis is talking about. And another guy in the Lamb Goat comments section. Now, I was surprised to read such insight in the Lamb Goat comments section because we all know about the Lamb Goat comments section. So this person says, I think the point here isn't so much that it isn't easy to make money. The point is that it may become impossible for a lot of smaller and middle-tier bands to go on tour because of the expense, which would suck ass. Yes, that's what we're talking about. The way the system is set up now, only the biggest and most popular bands will be able to do anything. And what's that going to do to the scene and to the arts and to the music scene as a whole if that's the case? We're only going to have Taylor Swift and Drake out there. We're not advocating for smaller to mid-tier bands. And it's getting harder than ever for them to survive out there, which is what Dennis is talking about, and that's what I'm talking about too. I mean, I've seen bands make announcements like, hey, that tour we were doing, we can't do it now. We can't afford it. We will lose too much money. And yes, you could be thick-headed and say, oh, well, just don't do the band, or, oh, well, just don't tour. And you know what? I don't like that attitude. What if you've been in a band for 15 years, but it's a smaller band, and a lot of people love it, and you love doing it? You shouldn't, you should just quit? So according to these people, they should just quit. Forget it. Why? We can make things more affordable. Things should be more affordable. And it's worse than ever out there. That's what I'm saying. I mean, if there's a single mother with 2 kids out there, are you going to tell her, oh, just get rid of your kids? Oh, just become a millionaire. Oh, just get a higher paying job. Oh, it's your fault that you have those kids. Actually, yeah, this is America, so A lot of people probably would say that. And that's the vibe in the comments section of these articles too. And you know what? I just think a lot of people out there are missing the mark on what Dennis is saying. So I would like there to be opportunity for everyone. You've heard bands talk about it on this show where governments in European countries actually support the arts and there's money out there to support artists. I would like there to be more of that in this country, but that's just not the case. Costs go up and everyone suffers. So that's it. Okay, so moving on, we got a new email from Jack. Let's read this. Jack says, "Hi, Keith. I just wanted to say how much I appreciate your podcast. I'm of a similar age, turned 40 in March, and grew up in the DIY punk scene in the UK, but now live in Atlanta, where I was originally born. And for some reason followed you on Instagram, but didn't really know how or why till I found your podcast and have been binging it for the last few days. Check out my recent Apple Music search list." Let's see what Jack is listening to. Page 99, Holy Fawn, Easy Prey, Mall Walker. Oh, yeah. Good stuff. Good stuff. Jack, thanks for writing and thanks for your support. Okay. So, besides, so I'm happy that the podcast is getting mentioned in some publications. And look, everything's good. I'm going to be out with the Darling Fire soon. The tour kicks off June 9th in Miami at Gramps. If you live in Miami or in the surrounding area, come through. We're also playing Tampa, Orlando, Jacksonville, Charleston, South Carolina, opening for Spotlights. Have you heard the new Spotlights record? You have to. You just have to. So come to the gigs, say hi to me. I'll be the guy playing bass. So that's it. I'm back next week with a new episode and a new guest. So thanks everybody for listening, and until next time.